All right, this is the amazing journey of how Blazor allowed me to write this amazing cool component, which is a star rating in Blazor. And I'll show you the conversation I had with it to achieve that. So first I went and I told it, okay, design Blazor component to allow users to vote by number of stars. That's just very generic. Came back, sure, he wrote this code. It's like, okay, great. I explained it, copy paste as it is, and I played around with it. It it was okay, but it was not quite what I wanted, right? So at least something, it got me started, right? So I played around with the code it had, and it I don't think it worked right out the gate the way it is, but at least I tweaked around. It gave me something to play around, and then I came up to a point where okay, I got it working, right? And then I came to it like I didn't tell what worked for it and all that stuff. I just independently, since it was working for me, I didn't bother to come back and say, hey, this is how this tweaks. I just went. The next challenge I had for it was allow stars to be half filled, so ratings can have 3.5, 4.5, etc. So it came up with a different set of code, right? It just added some, and it gave me ideas how to go about solving it for my own. So I said, okay, great, it did this. And I copy pasted and played around with it, and it was kind of working. The half, like, except when it was half filled, like the star, it was not, it didn't look right. It looked like an inverted three or something. So I told it, okay, I apologize. It kind of corrects itself for the component, and then it gave a different set of outcomes, like a different set of CSS. I hope this updates for you. I said, the CSS doesn't look right with the half star. So he said, okay, comes back again, gives a different set of CSS, and almost there. At this point, it got it to where the half star is kind of filled. It's half filled and it looks good, but it's a little misaligned versus the other stars. It's not quite aligned. It's like, so I said, okay. And then they kept on trying with the same solution. It wasn't quite working. So meanwhile, at this point, I said, you know what? I went and solved it on my own with Font Awesome, and like it gave me enough hints to go about it. So I said, oh, great. So at least I got to work into what I wanted, and I was looking for a different set of problems. And now I wanted to allow the users, when they mouse over it, to be filled up to the point they mouse over it, right? I wanted how it to give me generate like some sort of idea as to how to start and build that, just. And sure enough, it came up, but this time it completely ignored the previous solution it gave me about the CSS version, and it went with Font Awesome out of it on its own because it was much simpler. And that's what I found too. Like that's how I solved it on my own. And I said, wow. So since it knows font, it can use Font Awesome and all that stuff. Then I started grilling it further. You see what I'm saying? And then it gave me this code for it with the mouse over. So I said, great. I noticed you use Font Awesome. Okay, great. Let's rewrite so that it uses the following Font Awesome icons. For full star, I told it to use FFSM star because that's what I wanted, and I solved it on my own. And for full star that's filled, FFA text warning because I have bootstrap and this will make it yellow. For half star, use half stroke text warning. If it's half star, always fill it with text warning. So I give it this hint because users cannot rate by half star, right? They rate 1 through 5 or whatever, and the half star counts based on the calculation of previous votes, right? So I told it, I gave it this hint. It should support for halving, like, because this is like, I gave it the same parameters, because it's kind of like a rewrite of what we're doing. When mouse over it, it should show the stars filled to the hover star. I said, okay. Sure, I can help rewrite with font XMB provided, and it gave like some sort of some code. It didn't quite work, right? It gave this, and it was just, first of all, there's some states that it's not aware of because you're not supposed to use in a for loop. You don't want to use the I because of closure, and there's a lot of, it's not like out the gate it won't work, but it gives you a good idea how to go about it in a simple manner. And I'll show you how I solved it and then how it further optimized it. This is where it gets interesting, right? So it gave me this code. So I said, okay. And it gave some incorrect things that were not supported. Mouse lever is not supported. And I found out it was mouse out, you know, and I told it, however, the rating is still not quite working after modification. And I gave some explanation. Sure, it corrected, and then he gave a different set of outcome. I was like, okay, at this point I have enough information. Let me solve it on my own, right? And then I went the brute, like just to get it working. I didn't care about optimizing it. I said, at least let me get it working to the way I want. And after that, I can tell it, okay, optimize this code for me. So I said, it's not quite there. When I mouse over, nothing was changing. After a few debugging sessions, I got working with the following code, but I feel like it can be optimized. What do you think? And then I told my solution, right? It's the same code, but with two if else blocks. When hovering, it runs this set of code, and when it's not hovering, it says this I've solved, and it works fine, right? And the rest of the code is the same, like what it generated. It says, okay, your code looks good, but it seems some areas you can optimize. Instead of using two separate loops, render a star, you can combine them in one loop and simplify your code. You can simplify the logic, blah, blah, and boom, gave me a much cleaner, much simple, one loop, and concatenating all these, like states when it's half filled and this and that. I was like, what? That's it, it solved it. And that it had some simple like mismatched colons, and it fixed that too. All I told it is like, hey, this doesn't compile, this line doesn't look so good, what's going, you may have mismatched something. Boom, it solved it on the next line, and it's done. And now we have a component like this you can plug anywhere that has a star and allows people to rate it. Pretty amazing.